The second hour of the 9 to noon presentation is in the air, and our Minnesota Wild are taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs this evening. The game is on KFAN, and we're going to start with John Hynes, coach of the Minnesota Wild. And John, first and foremost, good morning. Thank you very much for the chat, my brother. And when it comes to Toronto, we'll get to Montreal in a little bit. Do games at Scotiabank Arena, formerly Maple Leaf Gardens, do they kind of have a Madison Square Garden feel to them? Is playing at Toronto special, or just kind of another brick in the wall?
Yeah. Good morning, Paul. Thanks for having me. No, I would say I would say that, Toronto. I think hockey is obviously a major part of the city here, and it is a little bit like New York. It's basically the biggest city in Canada, so you kind of have that same type of a feel within the city, and then and in the arena. So it's a cool place to play. Hockey's really important here, and it's a great city to be in too.
And of course, for you guys, you're back on the road, and of course, you go on the road twice last week, and you win them both. This home road production disparity, I mean, it's just crazy. Like, how do you read into it?
It's I know the home and road record is a little bit skewed. It's something, to be honest, I don't think you overly read into it. We have been on the road quite a bit. We've been on the road more than we have been at home, but I think it really just comes down to sometimes a mindset of how we want to play. We've had that mindset more on the road, more consistently than we've had at home. But I think we all recognize that, after this road trip and then after the Four Nations break, we play quite a bit of home games, and we'd like to make our home building and the way that we play at home a competitive advantage for our team down the stretch, and I'm confident that we'll be able to do that.
Now, last time we chatted was last Thursday, Vox in the Box at Tria, and that was the day Kirill Kaprizov was making his return. Now, as we learned yesterday when Bill Guerin called 9 to noon, some tough news with Kaprizov, and especially the surgery part. So do you think at times you guys have been at your very best when the biggest odds have been stacked against you?
Yeah, it is one thing I really like about our team and our staff is I think that, coming into this season, we had an objective that we wanted to be a hard team to play against, but we also wanted to be a mentally tougher group. And, when you're going to go through 82 games, you're going to face different challenges. Whether it started out with our road trip, right off the bat, or we've hit some injury situations that, we want to have a mindset that we're going to be able to bring our best and play our best regardless of the situation or regardless of the circumstances. And I think our guys have really done a good job. I think they bought into having a hard and intense training camp, establishing a foundation in how we want to play mentally and physically to give us the best chance to win. And, more often than not, we've been able to do that. Now, obviously, with Kirill out again, it's obviously an unfortunate situation, but, we believe we have good players, we have capable players, and I think, structure protects you. When you have strong structure and a deep belief in how you want to play, and you get your players and get the team to play at max capacity, you give yourself a chance to win every night.
While Kaprizov mends, so like after the surgery part, does he stick around with the team? I mean, I don't know what the recovery part is or the skating or anything, but what I'm getting at here is sometimes people get injured and then they just disappear, and then they come back and it's weird, almost like they're not part of the team. So I've just learned that it's been important when players are around the team, even if they're not playing. You follow me on that?
Yeah, for sure. No, Kirill, once he gets the surgery done, he'll be, we get back after the Four Nations break, he'll be around the team. All of our guys usually do that, just in the sense that they work out with our trainers. They're usually at the facility every day that we're there. The closer that they're going to get to play when they get back into that return to play protocol, skating, and the return is going to be somewhat imminent. We get them back involved in meetings and things like that. The one thing our coaches do a good job of is if guys are out for a long period of time and say we tweak something or make a change in a particular system or emphasize something, those guys will sit down with that in particular player and kind of go through those things with them so they know if they're out for a longer period of time, that there's been some adjustments to what we're doing or things we're emphasizing. So everybody, once they get back in, they're all caught up to how we want to go about our business.
And now you're back to what we talked about last week, where, I mean, you just have to monitor the player wanting to get back so badly that they try to push themselves to get back more quickly than maybe they should. And that's, where the trainers and the doctors and the discernment really comes into play here, right?
Yeah, it always does. I think usually when you have a surgical type procedure, there's more definite timelines of when a player can get back active, and usually it doesn't get to that point you're talking about until they've skated. The player feels like they're healthy enough to play in the game. Yet there might not be quote unquote 2 or 3 team practices that a player can get into because the schedule doesn't lend itself to that. So lots of times that's where the player feels ready to go, and then we just have to make a decision, the coaches, the management, the player, and the medical staff, that the player feels ready to go and has deemed himself game ready. After he's been medically cleared, then we just make the decision what's the right time to play him.
John Hynes, coach of the Minnesota Wild, at Toronto this evening on KFAN. Gus, your goaltender, Gus, he jumped up and improved at Chicago. What's the value of building off that?
I think it's good. I think Gus has gone through, like any player. They go through a little bit ups and downs. It could be a goalie that's playing pretty well, but is one save away from winning a game. It's no different than a goal scorer who gets looks at times but goes through a little bit of a dry spell, but their game hasn't really tailed off. I just like this mindset. I think he's practiced hard. I think he's working to be able to get his game back, and I think it was important for him to play that Chicago game. And although we didn't give a ton up in the first 2 periods, for us to win the game, we had to get 2 big penalty kills late. You get 6-on-5. A team's going to make a push. He had to make saves for us under duress to win that game, and I think that's a positive sign moving forward for him.
Now, after Toronto, the Montreal Canadiens, and it's the final game in Montreal Thursday for Marc-Andre Fleury. How unique and special will that be for Flower and really all of you guys, John?
Yeah, I think it'll be really important. Obviously, Flower's going to get the start in that game, and he's got a lot of history there. And I think, listening to him talk, he's got so many people that have helped him along the way in his career that are going to be there to see him play. And it's been pretty cool, seeing him play his last game in Pittsburgh. And the thing I love about it is that he's such a good guy. He cares about people that have helped him along the way. So for him to be able to play, back at home in Montreal is great. But the thing that's great about him is he's one of these guys. Why he's a Hall of Famer is I think those games are when he plays his best. It's a big environment. Same thing in Pittsburgh. He played really well his last game there. So I think it'll be special for him, special for the people, that have supported him along the way. And I think our team always rises to the challenge with and for him in those situations.
That night in Pittsburgh, I mean, it correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way they treated it, which was super beautiful and super professional, acknowledging the greatness of his career with the Penguins, in my opinion, it made it tough for Pittsburgh to win that night. I mean, because the fans were confused,
Yeah, it was like a home game at times because they were chanting his name in Pittsburgh. But, he's beloved there. He's done so many good things for the organization. Obviously, won a Stanley Cup there. And so, it's pretty cool. That's what I mean. It is unique, where he's deemed that this is going to be his last year. So it's his last opportunity to play in certain buildings. And, I think the ones that he's got some history with, it's been a unique environment for all of us, but it's certainly been fun.
So Gus tonight and a fresh Flower Thursday. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, Gus will play tonight, and Fleury will be in net tomorrow.
Sweet. Now, Boldy and Hartman scored when you guys beat Toronto here in that thriller 2.5 months ago. It was a terrific game. So let's add Marco Rossi's name to that equation. And now those are 3 right there that absolutely have to be scoring and offensive leaders, just overall leaders, sans 97, right?
Yes, and that's we've had Kirill out, for obviously a pretty long stretch there. I think a month prior to him coming back for the last 3 games, and that's where you need nobody's going to replace Kirill or replace his minutes or what he does, but that's where you need Bolds is a guy that we count on with and without Kirill. But I also think Zuccarello's playing some really good hockey. X starting to come around and come to form after his injury. We need a guy like Ryan Hartman to step up and even to play, be a willing skater, make good decisions with the puck, use his shot, be competitive on pucks. When he does that, he's an effective player for him. Now we need him, in that situation. Marco's another guy where, he's been good for us, but the consistency level that we need him to play with his speed and playmaking and getting on the inside, it's a great opportunity. These guys are, they're all good players. They're all capable of playing those roles and being real effective guys for our team. I think they're all competitive men. So it's a great opportunity for them to, again, with Kirill out, playing some different roles, be counted on to be difference makers for us night in and night out. And they're going to have to rise to the challenge, as well as the rest of the team.
Appreciate you. Last one here, Coach, because I know you have that morning skate around the corner. The Maple Leafs. Why is Austin Matthews able to score at such a high rate?
Well, Matthews is, he's an elite player. He's similar to, the dynamic of, say, a type of player like Kirill, where he's got great physical abilities. He's a tremendous competitor. He's got a great shot. He's got good vision. Those guys they're always difficult to defend because they can make plays that other players can't. But I think the important thing is that that you're playing against a guy he's a competitor. So the guys that play against him, it's not just you're playing against a skilled player like this. This guy's a high-end talent that has a will to compete that makes him dangerous.
Tear it up tonight, my man. Excited to listen to the game on KFAN and or watch it. And thank you very much for the chat, okay?
All right, thanks, Paul. Have a good day, man.
Yep, see you, bud. That's John Hynes, coach of the Minnesota Wild. Here comes Nordo with the cash thing, then Alec Lewis from The Athletic on some football. You're listening to 9 to noon.
The Fan definitely wants to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com, enter the keyword bills, and you might win $1,000. The keyword is bills. Just enter that now at KFAN Fan.
Here we go now.
Here we go, Paul!
1022 in the neighborhood being FM 100.3, KFAN. Welcome back. Alec Lewis covers the Minnesota Vikings for The Athletic and TheAthletic.com. He also does the Alec Lewis Show podcast. I'll learn more about that at Alec_Lewis via the tweet machine. And here he is. Missing the Senior Bowl and the windy conditions and your native Alabama. Here you are in the 651 Carpets Plus studios, not in your native Alabama and the windy conditions. And good morning.
Good morning. It kind of hurts not being down there in Mobile, because anytime you get to spend in Mobile, Alabama at a football field watching a lot of players you've never heard of is as beneficial as it gets. I actually got a picture yesterday from someone there of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah on the field. So he's there. The Vikings staff is present. I am not. A lot of interesting players down there, and I kind of wish I was there. Although I will say the nighttime, we've talked about this, the nighttime activity at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, it's aggressive. And
like the hotel lobby bar?
Not the hotel. Yeah, exactly. You're just downtown and you're like, oh, Ryan Poles is at Battle House. All right, let's get there. Oh, agents are, you're texting agents. Where can it can be relentless. I'll do that at the combine. So I don't need my body needed more rest than to be doing that already.
Okay. Well, if like Bears general manager, if you catch wind, Bears general manager Ryan Poles is at wherever you said, like, why would you go there? Maybe he's with like friends and family and having dinner or something.
I'd want to talk to him about how how they're retaking the North and never giving it back.
Right.
That would be the priority in terms of the conversation.
What is the protocol for that, by the way? Because PA, you and I have done the combine. You've done it longer than I have, obviously, but when we would go, I'd see these people out. Like even if I'm in your spot, I'm a beat writer. I cover an XYZ team. Like, I couldn't walk up to somebody while they're eating some shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's and be like, hey, what are your thoughts on the draft? Like, I don't know what that protocol is. They kind of set themselves up for it, when you're in that bubble. but I'd have a hard time walking up to a GM like, John Elway on his cell phone in the lobby. Like, I'm not like, hey, when you're done with that call, can I get 3 minutes? Like, I couldn't do that. Is that okay?
Yeah, no.
Is that accepted in that? I couldn't do that.
I think it's called going Thomason on it.
No, you don't know. If a person's on the phone or if they're eating shrimp cocktail, I mean, it's like, discretion's the better part of valor. And so you would make the decision that you'd prefer, that would be the right one to make. But no, the reality is like a lot of it is you're there with another football person that and they introduce you to X people. That's
so you you sneak up on them, you sit really close to them, you try to listen and eavesdrop, but you don't actually initiate contact.
Well, see, this is part of why, like, even the combine, it can be this weird. I mean, no one talks about this, I guess, but like it can be this. It almost feels sometimes
it's a shoe size contest.
Yeah, yes. It is. Yeah, there's just so much
100%.
ego involved, so much alpha energy, so much like how forward, how aggressive are you going to be to get some morsel of information? That's why I say all the time when I'm on the radio with you, like, it's not really my jam. I love doing stories that people are willing to talk, they're open to talk and all that stuff. But yeah, the Senior Bowl, I mean, I will say this. There are two prospects at the Senior Bowl that I want people to remember. The names are Walter Nolan, a defensive tackle from Ole Miss, and TJ Sanders, a defensive tackle from South Carolina. Just remember those names, file them away. They are the three technique guys who can rush the passer, and I'm sure they'll be of interest down the line.
So you, more than covering it, follow it from afar to like store mental memories for when you get to the combine or the off season, right?
Yeah. I mean, like yesterday I was watching the NFL Network cast and I thought Tom Pelissero did a great job and was entertaining as always. And you had Daniel Jeremiah, works for the NFL Network and is great in terms of evaluating prospects. And he's got a ton of relationships. Like Daniel Jeremiah knows Kevin O'Connell well. So I like listening to it because it's the job and I better know what I'm talking about if I'm talking about any of these prospects. But right. I also would be lying if I said I don't just enjoy watching guys who are drafted and seeing if they develop. And I kind of file notes away of like, I watched this guy on film. This is what I think about him. Did it work in the NFL? How did they look in the NFL? Just so I know I can confirm how uncertain and difficult of a process as it is.
Well, with the combine, which is in a month and change, right around a month from now, all the head coaches and GMs do press conferences, and they're quite popular. So, like, I'll be there later Monday, all Tuesday, most of Wednesday, then I leave. I'm hoping during that time, new Bears head coach Ben Johnson does his press conference, and I'm able to see it because I can't wait for you to ask him. So with the 2024 Chicago Bears, what exactly was the sleeping giant that you saw in them, specifically given you look at defense? What sleeping giant did you see in the Bears defense?
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
He said they're a sleeping giant?
Yes, he said one of two things that have stuck out. You got LaFleur catching strays.
Yeah, that was wild.
It was weird. And then in a separate interview, he said of all the teams, paraphrasing, in the NFC North, he felt into last year the Bears were the sleeping giant. And I'm like, if I'm a Bears fan, I'm a little concerned about that because he's compensated to look at defense. And outside of Montez Sweat, there wasn't, Jalen Johnson maybe, there wasn't a lot of sleeping giant to that defense,
No, I mean, I will say they have a ton of cap space. They have more cap space than the Vikings do, and they probably have more picks than the Vikings do because I would have bet 31 teams in the NFL have more picks than the Vikings do.
The Golden State Warriors have more NFL picks than the Vikings do.
That was the point. So maybe that's what he was talking about. But I watched a little bit of the presser, and it was his presser, not all of it, obviously, because I didn't see that he said they're a sleeping giant.
No, it was in a separate interview.
It was as if it was like trying to portray it was an interesting,
like trying to win approval.
You just got to be authentic. And I think Ben Johnson is a very good designer of offense. I think he will build a system around Caleb Williams. But just as well as I do, like Kevin O'Connell has been a great head coach here, not because of the offensive design and the play calls. That's obviously a part of it, but he has installed a program and developed an entire culture. Essentially, I mean, a lot of it on his own, and that's what it takes. It takes buy-in from people in the building, from executives, from players, and he was able to garner that because that's his authentic self, and that's the task for Ben Johnson that is not an easy one, and you can't accomplish via press conference.
Alec at The Athletic is all over the Vikings and free agency. Also at theathletic.com. And he also recently wrote a 10-step off-season plan for the Minnesota Vikings and started with some warm and fuzzies that they should, cut Ed Ingram and Brian Asamoah.
Oh my God.
What? I mean, couldn't you what led you to lead with that one?
Well, I structured the 10-step off-season plan in the order of how the off-season would go. So you make roster decisions with your own roster, then you hit free agency, then you prepare for the draft and do some internal scout study. So that's how I structured it. And I think, the first thing that this team's going to have to decide is which free agents that are departing the building do they want to bring back, and which current guys do they feel like they need to make decisions with. So for me, it was how can they generate more cap space, even though they already have a lot, but if you could generate more, why would you not? So cutting Ed Ingram, believe, would generate the Vikings $3.3 million in cap savings. And then Brian Asamoah would be more of a move to create a roster spot. You would say probably $1.5 million. But Ed Ingram, I don't think any of us would sit here with any confidence and say that he has a meaningful role this upcoming year. If you believe that a Walter Rouse could end up sliding into guard, he could potentially be a backup. And then at that point, what would really be the role for Ed Ingram? Would you rather use that $3.3 million elsewhere? I think you would. That's why I started with that.
And next, the suggestion, and I like the perceived chronological approach to this. I didn't pick up on that when you wrote it.
I should have probably explained that.
Makes sense.
Approach.
So the next one was extending safety/hybrid Josh Metellus, tight end Josh Oliver, and fullback C.J. Ham. What led you to that?
Yeah, that was also, a lot of that is cap space moves. I view the first two different than C.J. Ham. Josh Metellus, obviously, I think it's pretty clear that anybody watching this team knows that they would want to keep him around. He's still young. He is a dynamic player and a dynamic leader internally, a captain. So he's only has 1 year remaining on his contract. Extending him just makes sense. And
they locked him up at the perfect time, by the way.
Incredible. Yeah, they got him at a very good number. I believe it was before 2 years last season. I can't even remember when that deal happened.
It was before last season, I believe.
Yeah, but they could probably extend him another year, and then smooth over some additional cap room for this year. Josh Oliver, externally, I think a lot of people would be like, I don't know about Josh Oliver. What does he really do? He's not a dynamic pass catcher, but he's been huge in terms of I know the staff has really liked what he's done for them. Mm-hmm. He's at a pretty high cap number, so extending him at a feasible cost keeps him here and creates more cap room. Then the CJ Ham to me is a different conversation. He's got a $3.5 million cap number for this upcoming year. That's a very high number for a fullback. So the question that would have to be asked is it worth? Do they use a fullback enough? They use 21 personnel, which is 2 backs and 1 tight end, 15% of snaps last year. Is that enough to pay a fullback? He was also a great pass protector on late downs. And they revere him. The way they talk about him as a leader and a locker room guy, it's almost mind blowing how frequent and high praise they offer him. So I would be surprised if they let go of him, but that $3.5 million cap number is too rich for me. So extending him is a way to bring that number down. That's why that's why I included him there.
So with whatever form of purple purge is on the horizon, there undoubtedly will be those who catch financial restructuring strays, right? And it's I don't know who they're going to be, but that's just going to be part of it, right? You got to restructure. What if they say no? Then what do you do next?
Well, there's multiple options. If Josh Metellus, for example, I think he loves to be here, and I think he loves the staff and this organization. But like, just using him as an example, if he's like, no, I don't want to sign an extension, I want to hit free agency and garner the biggest contract that I can garner, then he's like, no, I don't want to sign the extension. Let's play out the contract, and then he'll hit free agency. I mean, there's leverage on the team, but there's leverage for the player, but it's always, do you want financial security, further financial security, or do you prefer like to bet on yourself? And different guys and their agents are going to prefer different routes. That's why I frame these as extensions, because that's a way to, you're kind of meeting in the middle in some way. You might lower the number, but you're giving them some financial security in some way.
So also with Alec at The Athletic and The
Very in the weeds,
Athletic.com.
by the way.
Right, but that's what we're here for. Likewise for a lot of the fans. Let Sam Darnold test the market. So first, what do you anticipate said market being for said slinger?
Well, I mean, it's a great question because, like, the draft class of quarterbacks is not good. Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, both very talented players, but you talk to people in the industry and they will tell you that those guys would not have been in the top 4 quarterbacks selected last year.
Wow.
At least. Maybe not even in the top 6. Like, so, I mean, essentially, the quarterback class in the draft is not great. Now, the free agent quarterback class is also terrible. I mean, it's like Russell Wilson, Jacoby Brissett, Justin Fields, Andy Dalton. Sam Darnold is the obvious, I mean, he in terms of his age, in terms of the production this past year, in terms of the arm talent, like he is the belle of the ball in that free agent quarterback market. And so I expect the market, I mean, there are teams like the Giants, like the Steelers, like the Raiders. There are teams with questions at quarterback, and given their avenues to find a quarterback in the draft free agency, Sam's going to be one of the best options. So I think the market for him is going to exist, and I don't know what that number looks like, but I mean, I think even though the last 2 games ended the way they did, he proved enough to warrant a deal that I think is gonna go for multiple seasons.
Okay, I'm probably making a mistake here, but I thought last year at the Combine when we were talking about all those ballyhooed quarterbacks, I thought like the feel was, that's a year ago, and stuff changes, that there were like 4 quarterbacks who would stick, that, you know, not necessarily start right now. Ward, Sanders, your guy from Texas, Ewers,
and Carson Beck from Georgia.
Thank you. That was the other.
You're dead on. I'm glad you brought that up, PA, because a year ago this time, and as we got closer to the draft, and Alec, I'm sure you remember this as well, we talked about this upcoming quarterback class vastly differently, to the point where it was, hey, if you're going to expend capital to move up to get a Drake May, why would you do that this year if you could chill and there's going to be this smorgasbord of opportunity in 2025? As a matter of fact, we could look back after drafting J.J. McCarthy and look back and see what we gave up on by not waiting and taking a stab in 2025. How different is that? Like Carson Beck's getting $3 million to go to Miami. Shedeur has kind of held up via his season in Colorado, but other than Cam Ward, it's truly completely taken a jump off a cliff.
Yeah, Quinn Ewers, I mean, believe he had some turnover durability stuff, so that hurt him.
And they had Arch Manning playing in big spots for Texas and taking Ewers off the field.
Yeah, even like Jackson Dart. So Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback, and
he's a sweet name, by the way.
He's an incredible name.
That's an SEC name.
Yeah, I mean, the most Ole Miss quarterback name in the history of Ole Miss quarterback names, Jackson Dart. But Jackson Dart, like people talked about him as a potential very high pick, and like he still might be, because I mean you hear things talked about like, well, who's QB3, and if you get the guy in the first round, that means potentially the 5th year option. So Jackson Dart could end up being a first round pick, but yeah, this quarterback class, I think every year probably there's such high hopes in what that quarterback class is going to be because the position's so important that you have your hopes up. And then, like, I like Shedeur. I need to watch more of him, but I think he's very accurate. I think he sees the field pretty well. He just is not the biggest guy, and he's not the most athletic guy. And then Cam Ward, on the other hand, is like this creator, improviser, but can he stay within the rhythm and the timing of play? Like, you don't. I think there are questions. So, it's always like, I think the thing is, the way I talk about these quarterbacks now, I guarantee you in a month, one of them that we're not talking about is going to have some balloon helium and fly to the top of the charts, because that's just it's just what happens.
The pro day and the workouts. Yep. Oh, yeah.
The Anthony Richardson factor. Right?
I
mean, Anthony might have been considered a first-round pick, maybe low second, but then holy cow, he goes in the top 10.
Well, it's like could Jalen Milroe be that guy? You know, I'm an Alabama guy, and I've watched him for years, but he's turned the ball over so many times. He's also just an unbelievable athlete. So these coaches and evaluators see him, and oftentimes, though, it's not even like the evaluator's opinion. It's just agents pulling strings behind the scenes, and no one talks about this stuff because I guess to be able to get information, you can't talk about it because I don't really know.
Right.
But at some point, I guarantee you this cycle, there will be a guy like that, whether it is a Jackson Dart or a Jalen Milroe or one of the top two.
All right. So what do you think of this to land the plane with Darnold?
Mm-hmm.
It's how risky is this? Franchise tagging him. Is it 38 or 40? What's that number?
It's like around 40. Okay. I think maybe 39, actually.
Franchise and trade. I mean, it's a risky equation because, they know, they mostly know you want to go with the Michigan kid. You probably are quite happy with the raising of the reclamation project from the practice squad who got here from the Giants. So we're going to do this deal the way we want to do this deal, or we're not going to do this deal. Do you find it to be that way?
Yes, but if you think about it from the Vikings perspective, if there are 3 teams, let's say, that are willing to jockey for Sam Darnold, and you can ensure that you get him via trade as opposed to him hitting the market and then negotiating in that short window,
right?
Why wouldn't, would you give up a 4th round pick to ensure you're going to get the quarterback that you wanted in free agency? I think you might do that. Now, the question is, what is that pick? And I would say that a lot of these conversations, is it risky, to your question, is it risky for the Vikings to do that? I would say, I guarantee if the Vikings were to apply the franchise tag, they would have intel knowing the interest from other teams. Yeah. I don't know if that's like legal or like if it's within NFL rules, but I just know
the oxymoron legal tampering.
Right. Like conversations will be had, I'm sure, among the agent, among the team, among different teams in terms of what others would be willing to go. That if they were to do that, you'd have to know on the back end what would be in store.
Right. If they were to go that route,
it's 41, by the way.
You know what I think a sneaky team here is the Seattle Seahawks. Now it's Geno Smith. Geno was fine. Sam was fine until that Lions game. Sam had a better season than Geno. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, Clint Kubiak being the new offensive coordinator, he worked super closely with Sam Darnold a couple years ago, that Super Bowl year. And they, if they have the cash, they, with Metcalf and or Lockett, certainly Smith and Jigba, and you can play action off Kenneth Walker. They need some work on the offensive line, like a lot of teams do. But if you're to believe Clint Kubiak is just quite enthralled by Sam Darnold and what they did a couple of years ago working behind the scenes together, I think that's a wild card in the equation.
It's interesting for you to bring it up. I'm looking as we talk in terms of Seattle's cap space, just because I'm curious to see if they could fit it. But, you're right, with Clint Kubiak working with Sam in San Francisco, and that would be...
They'd have to cut Geno.
They got to cut him before March 16th to save $30 million.
And the Seahawks from over the cap, they're like 27 million under the cap. Over the cap.
Oh, geez.
So
there goes that.
I think the question would be, now, could they structure the contract to very light on the front end? I don't know. That's where you need to talk to Rob Brzezinski and other folks within the business. But I think there are going to be options. The overarching point is, for as tough as those 2 games were to watch, specifically the Lions game and those red zone misses. Like, I still think the production over time will lead, and paired with the lack of a great market in the draft and in free agency at the quarterback position, is going to lead to multiple teams being interested in Sam.
There are a couple of non-obvious offensive lineman names that perk the interest and or intrigue our guest, Alec Lewis from The Athletic and theathletic.com. We'll get into those and more around the corner. It's KFAN.
Yeah, but. Double doink.
So, why are you a fan of re-signing running back Aaron Jones?
I can understand it both ways, I think. I mean, really, it's a reflection of me believing that they should do that is a reflection of, well, even if you draft a running back, which I think they absolutely should, and I think they will, because it's a very good running back class, and you can get a guy up and down the draft that could be a starter. You probably need some kind of veteran, right? And so if you look at the free agent market of running backs, the other options are just not great. Najee Harris, J.K. Dobbins, Javonte Williams. Like, I can get down with the Javonte Williams maybe. Now, I don't know how good he is in the locker room, how good he is in pass protection. Whereas Aaron Jones, I mean, yes, was he injured throughout a lot of the season? Of course. I mean, there was hip stuff, there was hamstring stuff, he got hit in the ribs, but he played every game, and he had 1,500 yards from scrimmage, and he gave you a weapon in the passing game. And so for me, the idea of pairing a young player to then learn from a guy like him who could still produce, even though he might not be his most electric self, I think that makes sense if you can get him on a very short-term deal that's, I don't know, around $6-7 million, which is what he made this past year. To me, I'd rather do that than pay like J.K. Dobbins $3 million and just hope.
Is there any, or of course there is, I just haven't found it, early steam on like this Iowa running back Caleb Johnson? All right, this beefeater who, I wouldn't say he's lickety split fast, but he's fast. And like if it's a super deep running back draft in what they still call a passing league, he's very intriguing to me for what, maybe they hope to do beginning next year with some new work and, with the interior of the offensive line, just putting the hits on the defense to wear down the defense to set up the play action in the passing game. Any idea, like, is this guy a Friday pick? Is he a Thursday first round? I mean, like, what do you think?
He might be a first round pick. Wow. I need to watch these guys more. I haven't really studied the running backs, but right. Yeah, I think Caleb Johnson is in that mix from like early second, late first type situation. What I would say to you is, I mean, this team needs to just hit in the draft. No matter how you do it, I don't really care what position you do it. For this team to be sustainable, you have to hit in the draft. Now, I will say, and Nordo and I talked about this in depth on the podcast, but it's like the trenches have to be a priority. They have taken the Vikings. This blew me away. The Vikings have taken
don't do it again
4 interior defensive linemen in the first round since the turn of the century when I was 3 years old.
Oh, geez.
Chris Fred Robbins, Kevin Williams, Sharif Floyd.
Now,
Hovan ultimately went out to become a DN, didn't he?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's no, it's not a shock then that the interior of the defensive line has not been spectacular with pass rushing force, because you haven't taken a first round pick at that position since 2013 when I was a sophomore in high school.
Jeez.
So the point that I'm trying to make is, yes, could Caleb Johnson be a first round pick? Yes. Do the Vikings need to probably draft a running back? Of course. But the trenches this entire offseason, once you figure out the quarterback situation, you identify JJ McCarthy, his readiness, all that stuff, it has to become a trench focus. Because you look at the teams that win and where they supply their resources. The Chiefs, they've drafted George Karlaftis, Felix, the guy from Kansas State. Chris Jones obviously is spectacular. They pay him a lot of money. The Eagles, they have drafted Nolan Smith, Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. I could go on and on and on. And then we haven't even talked about the offensive line. But that's where these teams that win apply their most important resources.
Okay, well, speaking of offensive line, why are you a fan of potentially signing Indianapolis offensive lineman Will Fries? I mean, he played just 5 games last year.
Broke his tibia.
Okay.
Was very productive before that.
Is he a tackle? Isn't he a tackle?
He's versatile, but he can play right guard.
Okay.
And I mean, really, like when you're shopping in the free agent market, there's a reason guys are in the free agent market.
Yeah.
They're not obviously. They haven't convinced the team that they are worth extending. Sometimes,
like this Trey Smith cat from Kansas
Smith.
City. I mean, if the Chiefs choose to allocate money elsewhere, because they're going to have to deal with McDuffie eventually and so on. Well, they just might not have enough money to sign this guy, so he might have to leave.
Well, Trey Smith is a different deal. I mean, this guy is 25 years old. I don't even know if he's missed a game his entire 4 years in the NFL. I mean, Trey Smith, in terms of decisions that teams make in free agents, he is as certain of a bet as you could make. But that's what you're doing in free agency. You're making educated bets, essentially. And
well, he's going to make a lot of money.
Well, that's the key, though, is like Nick Allegretti, Wiley. We talked about it when we were looking at the Commanders. Like you've found some value in some of those guys in the past. This is the primo dollar guard in free agency. We're in like 16, 17 or more.
No, it's going to be 20 million. Around that number. He
made $940,000 2 seasons ago.
He's represented by Tori Dandy of CAA, who has set the market of a lot of different. I mean, Trey Smith with what he's done with his age. I mean, it's going to cost.
You got to be careful.
It's going to cost a lot of money, and really, the reason I mentioned Will Fries and Tevin Jenkins was because. I mean, you could weigh.
I have zero interest in Tevin Jenkins.
No, thank you on that.
If they sign him, I mean, great. Let's Sky Yuma. Let's let Minnesota Moving Company. Let's start mashing people. But I mean, he misses so many games. He's a hothead. We got the penalties and everything.
Yeah. I mean, again,
haven't they tried him at tackle and guard over the course of his time there too? And it just hasn't worked at a high level, regardless of where he's at.
There have been times where he's produced, but again, he's not very durable. He has not proven to be durable. And there's again, the Bears need interior offensive line help just as much as the Vikings do. They're going to be in the market for Trey Smith as well.
Right.
And so if they're allowing a guy to leave their building, there's probably a reason for that. Now, we could do the whole change of scenery conversation and all that, but it's going to become a question for the Vikings as they seek interior offensive linemen in free agency. I mean, how far are you willing to go on one guy? Would you rather disperse that money to multiple who are more risky? I mean, those are conversations that are going to be happening on the 3rd floor of the TCO Performance Center, and I wish I could be in them. Unfortunately, I can't.
Okay, well, when I say be careful, I mean, I like Trey Smith too, a lot. When I say be careful, when you play offensive line for Patrick Mahomes, you look better than you probably really are. And I'm not saying that he's bad by no stretch. Patrick, like Brady, covers up blemishes, A-Rod's too, in second and third to none fashion. So I'm just saying you just got to be careful, you know?
No, I think it's a great data point. He also plays next to Creed Humphrey, who is an incredible center. Does that help him out in some ways? Do they slide, double team together? I mean, those are all layers of this that, again, to really have the only way to really know how worth it is to just to allocate that money on a player like that. I mean, you got to have done this for a long time. That's why the people get paid the money they do inside that building.
All right, last one. Assumedly, will we see you next Wednesday?
Yeah, you'll see me next Wednesday.
Cool. We'll get into the Super Bowl hard next week.
Okay.
So, Milton Williams. Alec wants to give Eagles free agent defensive tackle Milton Williams $20 million a year.
No, I don't want.
You didn't write 20 in the story.
No, I said that's what he might generate.
Milton Williams, you say?
Yeah.
What do you love about him?
He's a young pass rushing force in the interior of the defensive line. Those guys don't come around often. If they do, they do early in the draft, and they get paid. I mean, you saw the contract that Christian Wilkins got in free agency last year. Now, Christian Wilkins is far more accomplished than Milton Williams, but those guys get paid. It might not be $20 million, maybe it is 18 or whatever. That's a lot of money to pay for an interior defensive lineman. That's why, for me, knowing that there are a handful of guys in the draft that are going to be intriguing at that position, that just feels like if I was like pegging it, and we're very far out, and I haven't been to the combine and gotten as much intel as I would get. But the interior of the defensive line being a possibility in the first round at 24 just makes sense to me.
You, my friend, are elite, and we look forward to seeing you next week, okay?
Always fun. Thank you. Good to see you, Nordo. And,
good to see you.
Yeah.
Alec Lewis, The Athletic, theathletic.com, and the Alec Lewis Show podcast. You can watch it on YouTube, and to learn more at Alec_Lewis via the X Machine.
Hardcore football.
It's 11 o'clock. Columnist Lavelli Neal III joins us next.